First off, guten Tag, everyone. I am Canadian. I am from British Columbia in a small town called Aldergrove. So a lot of Stephen King's books really connected with me because he likes to talk about small towns. Um, I've had quite an interesting life so far. I like where I first grew up was in Vancouver, which was the more city LA like kind of place until I was 3 years old. Actually, I remember the first picture my parents took with me when I was 3 years old, living in Vancouver, was with people dressed up as cows at the Pacific Ocean, where they were doing the polar bear swim, and I remember looking so confused. I was like, "Why are cows holding me up on their shoulders?" And then I moved into a more very cul-de-sac, very small neighborhood. And life kept growing and becoming less and less sheltered, and a lot stuff happened. My mom passed away from breast cancer about 9 years ago. My sister got a couple surgeries and whatnot for figure skating years. So our family has truly gotten stronger as individuals and as a family. But as for me, what I can also say is I draw a lot from my life experience, but also my own wonder of alternate timelines and alternate worlds of how can this person be in this world and that person in that world, and what parts of myself that I can implement in my writing, and I guess pick emotions from other people that kind of reflect how I feel sometimes on the inside.
You've told me you're into Stephen King a little bit. That's
I
interesting.
I, I love Stephen King. You can actually see behind my head the
Yeah.
first editions of it and the Talisman. I was looking for the first edition of Talisman for a long time because I just love the artwork, and also that book to me kind of like when I first read, I was like, this is a lot like what I like to do, where um I have these like parallel universes that are right next to each other and they don't know. Because in my series Boone and Jacques, um I essentially created my own Big Bang, where a sister planet called Theranosita had a cosmic bridge that imploded basically over time, and therefore caused some of the livestock on that sister planet to merge into Earth and alter some of Earth's land and water. So that created all these different towns and basically a slow erase of what we are familiar with, the structure of our world. So basically, I made my own Pangea, but just a bit more, just a little different. I essentially created the migration of all land to essentially create an Ecuador kind of loop around the world, and the water basically had all these islands on either side. So that means that eventually the Earth will self-implode due to all the land and water changes. And I was like, I have to be careful with that. I have to take my time exploring every possible story that I can fit into this, because realistically, a planet wouldn't survive that kind of change for very long. So, I'll obviously have to use magic to change that. But yeah, I've really started to slowly create my own universe, and that's why I became such a big fan of Stephen King, because he does a lot of stories that reside in the same sort of areas, and he would sort of connect either a series or individual books together in which there are nods to characters that share a role in either world that he creates. But that's not to say that I like every book. I love Stephen King, but I don't see myself reading all 60 plus books of his. I'm still picky, but yeah, he's been a big influence for me. I hope to meet him one day.
Yeah, I guess so, that he was a big influence because had a big influence on myself too. Because I started pretty young with reading his books. I'm 44 now, and yeah, I was very young when I did read his the first book, the first Stephen King book. He has a very unique style that draws you in and creates a very interesting atmosphere in his books. Are you interested in all these things anyways? So when you talk about parallel dimensions and stuff like that, is this an interest of yours?
Yeah, I mean, it would be unrealistic to say that we're the only living source of life in the universe. That'd be very narrow-minded to say that there's no such thing as a parallel universe or alien life. But I don't think that these forms of life, whatever dimension or planet that they're on or galaxy, are aggressive, as Hollywood loves to paint them. Because even if these entities or these beings were aggressive in nature, it would take them centuries to get here because we're so far away. It doesn't matter how advanced their technology is, it would take hundreds of years for them to even arrive to this planet. And even so, how much of humanity would be left by the time they get here? Like if we're talking right now and we have no idea whether aliens will come to not just visit this planet, but also look at its resources and understand whether or not it's valuable to them. It's naive to say that aliens don't exist, but it's also naive to say we should be scared of them. Because if these UFO sightings were real, which I'm sure they are, they probably had no interest in taking anything from us because they've already assessed it before they got there. If an intelligent race saw what we had and then went away, that means that the resources that they already have on their planet is stable enough for them to not feel the need to take anything from us, or at least educate themselves on how we go about utilizing our resources to survive. So really, they would only be here for educational purposes, not for the sake of conquering.
Yeah. Interesting thoughts, but still, it could be possible that they are traveling through the interstellar space in generation ships because they lost their
Hmm.
planet maybe and they're looking for another planet.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
But you mean to me, if they're looking for another planet and it's already populated, I think the only thing that they would do is share resources and then take some of those resources to another planet that's uninhabited. Because if they were to try to inhabit Earth, they would need their own space. So unless they deem humans bugs, like as in they don't care if they mow them over, then yes, they would do an invasion. But if they've already observed us and seen the resources that we have and then went back to their home planet or went looking for another one, that means that they know that we're not the only source of life that has resources. So they can go to another planet and see if that planet has better resources. And if they have a very low population, then they would just reside there. It's all about who's there first or who's willing to make room for that. That's that not just that brace of life, but also safety. Do they feel safe sharing that space? I mean, that's the whole that's why Hollywood does those movies, is because they think that if it was the other way around, where we visit another planet, would that race feel safe with us being there? So it's a matter of stranger danger kind of thing.
Yeah. I also think for the most part, they are just curious, studying us, studying nature, the planet itself. Yeah. Also as an author, what do you think about the ancient aliens theory that they have been here before and helped us with all this stuff, or maybe created the pyramids, stuff like that? You into that?
I don't believe in that. I think whoever created that theory, because none of us have any recordings of how the pyramids were built. We just make assumption on the difficulty of what it would be to make that structure, but Egyptian historians have already proven how those were made by humans and, of course, slavery. So really, it was a different time where because they didn't have technology, they utilized as much intelligence as they had for their human brains could surmise to create these structures. So even though it seems impossible that humans can do that alone, I believe that it was just humans. To say that aliens helped them, it's kind of silly. I mean, that's just what I know. If I educate myself, then I might have a different answer. But I think it's funny that some people believe wholeheartedly that it's aliens because it looks hard. It looks hard to build that. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure humans are sophisticated enough, regardless of what time period, to build any structure that is sound. I mean, look at how weak structures are now in terms of roads, how they break down all the time because modern technology goes for the cheaper dollar route instead of like the Romans that built roads that lasted centuries. And that's because back then they relied on taking their time to structurally build everything layer by layer. Where now it's like, oh, let's put some gravel and some sand and some asphalt and call it a road. Oh, it's broken down 2 years later. Oh, well, more money to spend. Let's go, let's go fix that again. So I don't know how what else to say to that.
Yeah, interesting thoughts. But one has to admit that there are certain structures that makes you think how it was built because ancient Egypts they only had copper as tool, copper tools, and stone tools.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the pyramids now, some of them have broken down over time. They're not perfect anymore. That's why, like you're saying, the structural materials that they had to work with weren't that great. But as for how they got it so high, I've seen like on the Discovery Channel how they used pulley systems and ramps and all this stuff, and of course brute strength from slaves. Um, that's how they got it so high is just by mechanics, you know. And of course, I get the skepticism because it's hard to really picture it in your head if you weren't there at that time. Um, but I think if there was some kind of extraterrestrial help, it would be more of sharing of knowledge as opposed to sharing material. Because if aliens saw what humans were doing, but they had their own planet to take care of, I don't think they would actually assist humans in uh, building whatever structure they need. I think they would just be there to share resources, but not to share, I guess, voluntary efforts to help the other race.
Mhm. I like the idea that there have been civilizations before us. We forgot about them. Maybe them built the pyramids, and then the ancient Egypts came and saw these pyramids, and y- you just used them because they were there. I like the idea. Yeah, who knows? Are you following all that stuff that happens right now in the States? Like the thing with David Grush and the whistleblower stuff with the UFOs. Are you following the topic?
No, it's just with the states when they talk about that kind of stuff, it gets a little too, how can I put it? It kind of manipulates Americans' brains of what is out there because yes, there's more and more reveal from NASA's classified documents that is becoming public and not public knowledge. But even if I was paying attention to what you're talking about, I think that there's what they're doing what American government always does, scare people,
Yeah.
scare and confuse people.
Mhm.
Because even if they have some relationship with aliens that they're not sharing with the public, I think again, it is just informational and sharing of technology for the sake of security and stabilizing whatever resources are still available to us. Because probably the government sees that our natural resources are becoming limited and therefore are communicating with an alien race to understand how can we sustain human life and what do you want in exchange for that help.
Mhm.
So it's all about sharing whatever they can without there being any fighting. And that's why I don't really listen to talks about UFOs and aliens, because I know that the government likes to keep things to themselves because of the mass chaos it would cause if they were to be so transparent, because they know that their job is to create order and control. So whenever they talk about in anything outside of our world, it's more reserved. They're not trying to actually share anything genuine. They're sharing whatever they deem safe to tell the public. That won't cause public to go confirm that information. So meaning visiting sites that could contain government protected alien craft or life.
Interesting. But let's come back to you as an author. Who else inspired you? I like the work of H.P. Lovecraft a lot. What do you think
Hmm.
about H.P. Lovecraft's books?
Well, it's right behind me. I read a couple of his. I'll be reading more of it. People say that my creatures are H.P. Lovecraftian, even though I haven't really delved into his worlds. For example, in this new fantasy series I'll be working on called Pendulum of Krazul, um, I'm creating this creature called Zakul, which is part tarantula, bird,
Hmm.
and eel, electric eel.
Oh,
So essentially what this creature can do is basically a flying spider with the beak of a kraken. And the eel part of it is it latches onto its victim, poisons them, and then releases and then grips them much harder and then teleports them to its lair. So it's a very it's not like the boss beast kind of thing. It's more of a pharaoh's big pet. So he'll cast this creature to go and fight off his enemies or control whoever is trying to get in his way.
what was the first story you've ever written?
The first story I've ever written was a duology called Unforgiven, which was written 2 years after my mom passed away, and it was my way of dealing with grief. So it wasn't that great. I had never written a book before. The first book was 84 pages, and then the second one was 276. It wasn't my first delve into fantasy. It was me trying to um create an alternate world where my mom was claimed as being sick, but it was really just to get the main character Henry back into the family and introduce him to a family secret where family used to was a family of art thieves. So once he's introduced to that, he's completely thrown off and doesn't know if he wants that life. And then eventually he gets used to it. But then there's Vasilev, which is the antagonist, and he wants to basically destroy his family before they get their hands on a prize that he wants. So, yeah.
To me, fantasy is a way to escape reality. This is why we read these books. It's a great way to escape reality because reality sucks sometimes, let's be honest. We have to go to work, we have to pay our bills. I really do like fantasy. I really do like science fiction. Back then I used to read a lot of Perry Rhodan. I loved Perry Rhodan books. How do you stay inspired and what inspired? Do you read a lot to get
Yeah,
inspired?
I do a lot of reading. I've been rereading Harry Potter. I'm almost done. Not because I want to write something of that demographic, but because I try to refresh my memory on what is it about this series that got my attention the first time, and what can I do in the most original way possible um, to do that kind of effect on readers. So when I got to the book Half-Blood Prince, which is the sixth book of the series, I realized that that's the the energy I'm going for at the beginning of my series, Pendulum of Krasul. For those listening, Krasul is spelled Khrazul, just so no one gets confused. Um, so in Half-Blood Prince, the first two chapters, Harry Potter is not mentioned or even in the scene. Or he's mentioned but not in the scene. Because at this point of the series, it's more about the politics and the level of danger of dark magic taking over everything, including government. So I like the idea of Harry's safety becoming smaller, but the stakes that are so high that it's bigger than him. So I want to start off as my series like that. So for Pendulum of Krasul, um, the series starts with a prologue like most fantasy series, but rather than have the main characters be self-aware and even the focus of this beginning, I have them just be like this mantle, this that's it's the main interest of what can be used as tools to get to um whatever testament that has to be fulfilled. So basically the opening scene that I've started to kind of put together is there's this big conference room in the main family's home, and up on the ceiling is this sort of um circular mist that's green and amber showing through the floor um two infants in a little wicker basket, because the idea is that these two babies that the father and current mother um made sure that they had that offspring because they know that that mom comes from a very powerful magical family, and therefore there's this sort of prophet that these twins um will set a fate for this land that I haven't named yet, where Krasul, which is an alien pharaoh trapped in space and time, whoever reaches this alien first will either enact a curse or embrace the true power of the dark magic that has already existed in this land. Because the idea of the series is that this alien will create an apocalyptic world that it deems right for the world and be in control of everyone. And once that happens, these two infants, when they become old enough to have their powers fully in control, um, will find pieces of a weapon that can combat this alien and reset the Earth. And in that process, one of them might die, one of them might be reincarnated.
Sounds like a very interesting story. So, where do you promote your books, and do you have good critiques on your books already? And
So for Black Rose Cocoon, which is my current book,
Mhm.
which is available in Germany for those listening, that one has just one review so far, but 5 stars. It's only been a month, so I'm happy with that. But I do have a lot of people actively reading it. They just haven't given a review yet. But what they're all saying is that it's very not just engaging, but very diverse. Because the idea that I wanted to make sure I capitalize on in Black Rose Cocoon is that I'm talking about the diversity of pain, meaning we all experience pain and our own version of distancing ourselves from emotion and reality, and that we can all learn to share pain and deal with it in a healthy way. For my series Boone and Jack, there's about 8 to 10 reviews for each book, so good on that. Yeah, no, everyone seems to like my books. I have a small community of readers, and I'm sure it'll grow bigger.
I'm sure too. So, I think it was in your bio that where I read that you've expressed the dream of pursuing your writing career in London, England. So, what is it about London?
I think there's just so much history there for literature and education and just world history, really. Really, what I want to do is just once I, make a living as a writer, I'm just going to start traveling places where I know that um, literature has always had a good place for value. There's a good place in Canada, obviously, but I want to explore the international side of things. Once once Ukraine and Russia have settled their issues, which I'm sure will end soon. But right now Europe is kind of messy with things, so um, it's not really a time to be visiting there until I know what the politics and war going on is going to be.
People don't buy books anymore. Everybody wants
Mm,
audiobooks. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the younger people that don't want to read anymore. They want
I
to
think it's just the
listen.
younger people.
Yeah.
I think it's younger people because I've found so many um communities on social media of readers, not just audiobooks, but physical books. I mean, even American celebrities have these very big book clubs that they can put their little sticker on and it becomes a bestseller. So that means that in North America, um, reading is a big deal. And it's a matter, I think what the thing is that the youth just don't have the focus anymore. It's not a matter of disinterest in books, it's more disinterest in patience. There's still a big community of people that love to read. And it's a matter of who are you looking for? What demographic? Like people were asking me if Boone and Jack is YA or young adults. I'm like, I didn't mean for it to be, but um really Boone and Jack was my trial and error of different themes and genres in fantasy to see what will get people's attention. And I didn't mean for it to be for a younger audience because I can't relate anymore to the youth. I write what I like to write, what I like to read. So no, I'm not scared about people not reading anymore. It's more about finding what people connect with, not what's popular. That's the only I guess fear that I have as a writer is wondering what do people connect with. So when I wrote Black Rose Cocoon, that's how I painted it. Is this is not a story about a serial killer. This is about how a serial killer affected everybody. So by diversifying not just the population, but diversifying how each person was a person of interest to this killer, um, I'm covering my bases of how humans communicate and create their own way of surviving. So any writer out there that's scared of losing readership because of how what's the word? The technology of comfort is evolving, don't worry, because if the technology of comfort is continuing to evolve, that means that there's a need there for distancing from reality because of how dark the world is becoming. So that means that people are still looking for stories to be engaged in, but that's the key word, is how do you engage with people in a way that they don't lose interest or patience in what you're trying to say. So instead of trying to say something verbatim, you try to embrace the power of entertainment that can encapsulate certain themes that people still want to be aware of, but not have it so in their face. That's really that's why readership has gotten down with YA or young people because they don't want to know reality. The reality to a young person now is horrifying. There's there's so much like delusion in youth's identity. That's why there's more and more gender identification because they don't like the idea of being seen as their sex of male or female because that means that they're being depicted a certain way and viewed a certain way and therefore their own identity as a person to them becomes diluted to that perspective of how society sees man or woman, and therefore creating less and less interest in how writers depict either sex, because they don't want to know. They want to be able to stand out for themselves and not be told, but even by a doctor when you're born, that you are a boy or a girl.
Hmm.
It's that's why their their interest in the bridging of fiction and reality becomes smaller because they don't want they just want fiction. They want they're so enwrapped in their delusion that they don't see the value of um just being okay with who you are, loving who you are. I
Yeah.
mean, why else would there be so much uh discussion now in colleges and universities about gender studies and what was there was another one that was kind of silly to me. Uh race race theory, so,
Sounds
something like that.
sounds wrong.
That's yeah, well, whatever. I mean, I've seen so much of that on YouTube, and I'm just like, what is going on? Why is the youth so like fired up about being seen as this simple, this not, oh yeah, this is a simple way of life, where the simple way of life is so so tainted to them that they don't want to hear it.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not into all that gender stuff. It
Yeah,
makes me
same here.
stick to my stomach, to be honest. I just don't get it, and I don't want to get it, to be honest. I
Yeah,
hope
no, same.
hope it's hope it ends somewhere. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Let's not get into that. Um,
Oh no, no.
reflecting on your experiences as a writer thus far, what have been some of the most, let's say, significant lessons you have learned throughout your way?
Um, I've learned to accept mistakes, really. Um, like, because I know so many writers out there that are perfectionists and still haven't released their first book. And it's been like a decade that they're working on it because they're so afraid of it not either making money or they find a mistake after they've published it, and then they get all nervous and paranoid. So I learned that, it doesn't matter how many mistakes you've made in your creative life. You're going to make mistakes in your life around that creativity. And it's uh it's important to understand that you are human, that just because you're creating a fictitious world doesn't mean there's not a real world around it. You know, it's whenever I put out a book in like 6 or 8 months, people ask me, "How are you doing this so fast? And you're working full time too." I'm like, "Well, I'm not rushing. I already have the story in my head. So yes, I have a loose structure I follow as an outline. Um, but I don't worry about the first draft being perfect. Because that would be crazy if I put so much time and effort into the first draft and didn't want to finish it until I was absolutely happy with it. Any writer that thinks that way is going to drive themselves insane. So you have to be okay with just and then once it's done, you can go back to it and then fix whatever is missing or wrong or in the wrong place. And then you go through it again, you polish it up as best you can, and then send it off to your editor. I know that there are some writers that can't afford an editor, so they try to do their own editing, and that's fine. But if you're like me, where your grammar isn't all that great, you need that investment to make it look as good as possible. For those who don't know, French is actually my first language, so that's why it took me longer to understand English grammar, and now I don't even remember my French grammar. I can speak it quite well, but I can't. I could never, at least not. unless I actually wanted to make the effort to polish up my French grammar. I couldn't do that right now. I still write a couple sentences in my story if I have a French character. Um, but yeah, no, that's the biggest lessons I've learned is be accepting of your mistakes, be accepting of who you are, and that you shouldn't take too much offense to people not liking what you've put out there. So if one or two people say they don't like what you make, fine. If a bunch of people say that they don't like one thing, then you know that's what you have to work on. And it's not about not doing it, it's more about working on it and still implementing that theme or character in your stories.
Mhm. Interesting. I like that. You said that one should not forget that there's a real world around us, and you're right, of course. But don't you sometimes sit there and think, if I could jump into my favorite fantasy story and stay
Hmm.
there, maybe for a while or forever, I would do it. What story would you like to
Uh,
jump in?
I think I would stay in the first book of Boone and Jack, Salton's Secret. Um, because it's an urban town and there's uh Boone and Jack are good friends and they enjoy their time. I miss that. I miss having a childhood friend that I could play with and be in a serene environment and that everyone is part of the community and there's adventure obviously in that world. Because I think that over time we forget what it's like to be a kid, what it's like to not have responsibility and to actually enjoy being outside without distraction. So yeah, I think that would be the one.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do dreams play a role in your writing? Do you have dream? I have a friend actually that dreams a lot, and he's has very interesting dreams, and he
Hmm,
has a book where he writes all his dreams. Every interesting
hmm,
he had, he writes a little story about his dream. He remembers his dreams actually. That's very interesting.
hmm.
I don't, unfortunately, but he does, and he writes down all of his dreams.
Um, I wouldn't say dreams, but I've had uh I guess my imagination of how I felt in certain moments. So for example, in my previous job, day job, um, the way things were not progressing and the level of demand and effort from us made me feel like I was like crawling on the ground with a heavy backpack full of rocks, and that no matter how hard I worked, I the bag got heavier and I couldn't get up. So it's almost like I was army crawling with no true destination. So I would say that I implemented those kinds of images and the idea of feeling poisoned by I guess self traps from grief or by frustration. Um and that's one of the things that I learned to um be okay with. You know, it's you don't have to punish yourself just because you feel limited by resources and capabilities. You're only limited by what you see in front of you and what you want to see. So when I left that place, that's when uh I wouldn't say repetitive, but the focus on my pain through my writing went away because I got out of that toxic environment and saw a lot of clarity in my life. So, for example, with Black Rose Cocoon, that's why I did that book to show people that you're not the only one suffering, and when people suffer, they suffer in different ways because not everyone has the same life. Not everyone wants distance from reality in the same way, or even want um the same dreams as you, or the dream life.
Yeah,
So yeah.
interesting thoughts. Very interesting. I like that. I've I've had crazy dreams for years. I've dreamed about lions chasing me
Mm.
for years, man. And last night I had a nasty dream about a big bear chasing me. I don't know what that is about. Hmm, maybe I should.
The dreams that I've had, it's kind of strange. I think the strangest one I've had that I used to have repetitively as a in my 20s, it would be me in this weird, rainy, dark space where I had this big beige ribbon attached to my heel, and I would be running around creating some complicated tapestry. And I think at that time, what I was going through was feeling my path become entangled, and that I was slowly creating a tapestry. And sometimes in the dreams, the ribbon would become an elastic, and that when I get to a certain point, the elastic runs out and snaps back into place, and I get back. I'm slingshotted back to where I first started. So I think at that time, that's what life was like. That no matter how many times I ran forward, there was some elastic band pulling me back. So I guess fear was a big uh fuel for my dreams and nightmares. There was this other one I had. It's when I saw my first horror movie, which was Child's Play.
Hmm, of course.
Um, I was 11 years old. I was visiting family in Egypt at this resort or beach house place called Amun, which was at the Dead Sea. And I one of my relatives and a couple cousins went to an outdoor cafe, and they had this old 80s TV playing the movie. No one told me what it was. I just remember being 11, being horrified by a killer doll. And of course, I had a hard time sleeping. I was so scared that when I opened my eyes, I thought I saw Chucky. And I I went to go to the bathroom because I decided to be brave. But I was in a beach house that wasn't done yet. So it was just a big brick building, and there were cockroaches in that building too. So imagine opening a door and you see gigantic cockroaches coming towards you.
Oh,
So,
oh,
yeah.
wow. About your first dream that you told me about with the ribbon, I think the ribbon represented your fears, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And you got rid of the ribbon, I guess.
Yeah, like eventually I had these sort of symphonic dreams where I would see nothing but darkness, and then my iris through my closed eyelid would see these like matrix kind of lights and sort of swirling around in the void. So that's when I know that I wasn't dreaming. I was just seeing these strange lights and orbs. Um, but sometimes I would have dreams of, I guess, being with altering personalities of people. And I read this somewhere where they said that when we dream, it's actually our consciousness going into alternate worlds where we see alternate worlds of a certain scene that we just went through in our actual life playing out differently.
Oh yeah.
So I believe that in a way. I had this friend of mine that I used to work with um, who did astral projection, which is a form of meditation where you visit other planets through your mind. And I thought that was crazy. I didn't believe that to be a real thing. As he said to me, he visited the Greys, which he deemed one of the alien races, and that when he was there through his mind, they deemed him too violent. And I tried not to laugh at him because I thought that was kind of cuckoo to believe that you went to an alien race and they're like, no, 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 you human too angry. And it's just like, okay. I mean, he did have anger issues, but I was just like, all right, if you say so.
Yeah. I I've had strange dreams for a while. Do you know these dreams? These kind of dreams where in these dreams you're in the same environment, you're in the same neighborhood, and you see all the people that you know in real life, but the roles are mixed up. So my neighbor is my
Mm.
brother, and my brother is my neighbor, and my wife is not actually my wife. It's somebody else,
Yeah, yeah, I've had that.
but it feels normal. But it feels yeah,
Yeah.
it's completely normal. So you know that these roles are mixed up when you wake up.
Hmm.
Those roles were mixed up. So there's everybody that you know, but everybody yeah plays a different role. But in the dream, it feels completely normal and
Mm.
as if it was the most normal thing in the world.
Yeah, I
Strange.
mean that's how I wrote some scenes in my books of not necessarily dreams, but the idea of dreaming about um how things could have gone or could be in your real life. Because we all have our nitpicks of our decision making and the reality around us. And plus, we all know that our reality is depicted by how we see it,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? There's people that live a black and white life, and there's people who live a gray life that ask all the questions. And that's how I became a writer, really, is by questioning everything. Like that that's why like sometimes dating or having a love life can be hard because if you think one way and someone thinks another way and it just creates arguments all the time, it can create distance between you and the other person because one person might want their goals to play out a certain way and will feel that you being their partner could be standing in the way. So it's a matter of perspective because if you believe in the idea of opposites attract, then that means that that person has strengths that you don't and that you wish you had, and that you lean on those strengths to uh, create a better life for yourself.
Yeah. You're right. Before we come to an end, tell me how hard is it for you as an author to do this for a living?
Well, I mean, I have a day job, so it's still at the point where I'm not selling enough consistently to rely on just my creative income. Um, I think the only hard part about it is um this space and time when you're not being creative. So I've told this to several podcasters and friends and family. Um, I haven't done any actual writing since the new year because I'm at a point now where whatever project I do next, I want it to be done in a way that my life makes a little more sense outside of writing, a little more together. Because when I was writing Boone and Jack, that was all about my past pain and working through it so that I can get to a point where my writing is no longer about me and more about creating other forms of life and trying to understand and echo other people. So that's what's hard about writing sometimes is where you want to use your creative outlet to work through your pain because it's easier and cheaper than going to a therapist. Um, but I don't want that to become a habit for me because if that's what it becomes, then it's less about uh trying to connect with others and more about not even connecting with yourself, but trying to numb yourself from actually um, changing the pattern of your life. Because when you create a pattern of consistently writing and not really putting as much time and effort into altering your life outside of writing, then it becomes a toxic part of you, as opposed to something you do for fun and out of passion. That's what's important to me is creativity should be done because of passion and curiosity, not just of yourself, but of others. And how can you create um a healthy approach to distancing yourself from reality that can simultaneously help you with yourself without it feeling like someone is trying to do that to you. Because when you read, you don't want someone helping you with you just want to be entertained. But if you can learn something in the process, then and in a way that doesn't feel like homework, then the writer has done their job because their job is not to force lessons on you. Their job is to include lessons that you've learned that might be taken differently from someone else, but they still value it as much.
Mhm.
So that's the tricky part is balance between education and entertainment.
Yeah. And I guess another tricky part is time management. What would be your advice to young writers start writing, have a lot of ideas, but have a day job or maybe two day jobs and
Hmm.
hmm,
Okay, well, so what's worked for me is I can't write on my working days because I'm too tired. So on my days off, I write an average of total 5,000 words in a span of 4 hours. So that's 2 hours a day. Um, but for time management, to me, especially if you can't write big chunks of work and you're starting slow, don't look at it as a negative. Any amount of writing that you do, as long as you feel that the story is progressing, um, is a success in itself. There are people that take years to complete a book, and it's not because of lack of effort, but because of uh the amount of responsibility that they have outside of that and their lifestyle. So if you're looking for tricks and tips for how to get a book done in a timely manner, I don't really have that for you. It's more of voluntary effort and how clear is the story in your head. That's really what makes a story take longer, is do you understand the story you're coming up with? So if you're the type of person that needs organization, where you have to do point by point structure before you put pen to paper, fine. As long as you have some kind of method to get the ball rolling and have some kind of system for beginning to end, go with it. And if the system you have is just not working, then throw it away. Try again, a different way. A lot of people get stuck in their ways and they think, oh, I just don't have the energy to change things. It's just like, shut up. Just be okay with starting over. And I don't mean starting over, I mean starting over in a different way. Because the more you try to force a story to work in one path or even one structure, it's just not going to work. You're just going to burn yourself out. You'll feel defeated, and you just won't bother with it. So be okay with breathing and being patient with yourself. And that if you're just starting out as a writer, try to go the self-publishing route because if you don't like the idea of deadlines and pressuring you into doing something that you're not ready to do in a timely manner, then start by yourself. And even do blog form. You can write a book chapter by chapter on a blog site and create a following that way without having to spend money and see where that takes you. The book The Martian, I forgot the name of the author, but that's how it started. And my business of writing teacher told us that story because it's important for beginning writers to understand that this author started his book as a blog, and then scientists, like actual scientists, corrected his terminology. He rewrote the chapters, and then created an e-file, then put it for Kindle for $1 on Amazon. And then it sold like crazy, and then film director saw that, and it became a movie. So really, it's just a matter of trusting yourself and seeing what happens.
Fair enough. I just Googled the book, The Martian. It's from Andy Weir. Mhm.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Interesting. Okay, so before we wrap it up, please let
Mhm.
people know where they can find you online. Tell us everything: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everything you
Yeah.
want. Mm.
Okay. So same handle for everything, AG Flitcher, AGFLITCHER for Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. For my books, you can go on Amazon for Kindle and paperback for all five books of Boone and Jacques. And for my latest book, Black Crow's Cocoon.
It's very, there's a lot of pages, right?
Yeah, this book has 456,
Oh,
450.
long read. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
my that's the average of my books. Yeah,
I had a fun talking to you. I hope we can meet again. Thank you. Please stay with me for 2 more minutes, okay?
no problem.